Hello and welcome to the Winging It Travel Podcast YouTube channel. Join me on my journey as I travel across the world, seeking out adventures, meeting new people and trying out new things. On this week's episode, we go to the coastal city of Halifax for 3 days to check it out. Then we make our way west to Peggy's Cove, which has the most photographed iconic lighthouse in Canada. Then we make our way shortly west to a UNESCO World Heritage Site in Lunenberg. Then we make the trek up north to Fundy National Park in New Brunswick before heading west to St. John the City, which is the last place before we hit Campervan Island to cross the border into Maine, USA. Let's get stuck in. Hello and welcome to the latest instalment and the very last instalment of the Canadian road trip in 2023. As we finish off Nova Scotia today, we're going to finish Canada. I'll give you my thoughts on the whole trip at the end, and hopefully it'll be a fairly good series for you to plan a trip to Canada, maybe next summer now, on the road in a camper van. So we left Truro after a Walmart stop and had coffee at Macca's, living the dream, and of course a Tim's bagel, which is always a great combo, coffee and a Tim's, and headed out of the town. It was a fairly short trip down, about an hour from Truro to Halifax, and we stopped at Apartment 3 Espresso Bar in Sackville. It's about 20 minutes from Halifax town centre. Great trendy cafe in there, people doing work, love the interior, it's modern, coffee tasted great, done some stuff in there. And then our plan for Halifax was an Airbnb because we needed it and we wanted to check out the town in its entirety, and we feel the most comfortable having a place to stay which is normal and not the camper van. Halifax was 3 nights, so I'm going to summarise those 3 days because not all of it was travelling down to Halifax, some of it was a rest day as well. First off, parking in town centre is available. It's fairly expensive, it's hanging around $12 for a whole day, but it is walking distance to the waterfront, probably 10-20 minutes. And we had coffee at Coffology. They are based on Dresden Row Street, which is very close to the CBD, and very cheap coffee, I think about $2.50 for an Americano, top notch. We walked down to the waterfront and the first thing we saw was, of course, 3 cruise ships. It's unfortunate, it's cruise ship season, so they're parked there and you can see all the hordes of tourists coming off the cruise ship and walking down the waterfront. Nonetheless, very blue, green, a great day, and it's well worth walking down the front. Lots of cafes, bars, views over to Dartmouth across the water on a sunny day. Perfection. We sat there in the chairs with some grapes, relaxed and enjoyed the view. As you go on, unfortunately on cruise ship days, bars, cafes are going to be full. So my advice would be maybe go to the centre of Halifax to avoid those crowds. But we actually walked up to the Citadel, which had a great view over the whole town. It's a fair walk up the hill. It's no slouch, but it's a very historic, 1800s Citadel, and the view is fantastic over the whole of Halifax, not just the waterfront. Would recommend that. The walks around the Citadel are free. If you want to pay some money, you can go right into the middle and to the top of the whole mound. It's like a big mound in the middle of the city. It's around $15, something like that. Check online to get the exact price. We didn't do that, it was closed because later in the day, but that is an option for you as well. Halifax gets much of the glory, but we did decide to get the ferry across to Dartmouth. Now, this day was fairly cloudy. We checked out the whole city, we walked around quite a bit. We wanted something different. So we went to the harbour front, got to the ferry office about a minute to go until the ferry leaves, and the guy at the office just said just walk straight through. I think it's a one-off. But we got lucky, got on for free, and got return journey as well. Now Dartmouth, not a lot going on. Went for a coffee, probably went for a 20-minute walk, and that was it. It felt more like a living area rather than something to see. But the view back over to Halifax was great as well. And it's just something that maybe if you're looking to move to Halifax, maybe Dartmouth is a bit cheaper to live than Halifax itself as in the city. So not much going on there. Good coffee, but very quiet. A further note about the ferry price. They want exact change in cash. And it isn't something easy like $3. I think it's something in between like $2.50 or $2.55, something like that. It's really weird. So just make sure you've got plenty of cash available. Otherwise, I'm not sure how you can pay for the ferry. I think us combined with arriving late and not having the right change got us on for free. And that was it for Halifax and Dartmouth. Enjoyed the city, loved the vibe, quite small. It was an option to maybe think about moving there. We're not sure if we would, but I reckon there's a nice little community going on there. Lots going on, I think, for a younger crowd. There's like a few universities going on, but for an older crowd like myself, maybe not. But loved it. Dartmouth, okay, a bit dull. Overall, worth checking out in Nova Scotia. After a rest day in Halifax, we were rested and ready to go to a couple of very interesting sites in Nova Scotia. Peggy's Cove and Lunenberg, both very popular with tourists. Lunenberg is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, very much on our list of places to see. But before that, we drove 40 minutes down to Peggy's Cove. Again, busy with tourists, very, very cramped with parking spaces. I would advise getting there early, especially before the buses arrive as well. They take up a lot of space. Managed to get a space though. I think we came in as someone left, so got a bit lucky there. And this is one of the main places to see in Nova Scotia. It's picturesque. It's got loads of houses that are colourful painting on the outside of them, a little fishing village, and it's got the most photographed lighthouse in Canada right there. I don't actually think that's anything special compared to the rest of them. They all are fairly the same, but this one obviously gets our limelight compared to the others. As a town, you get fish and chips, coffee, decent seafood. Would recommend Peggy's Cove. I would get there early, avoid the crowds, and get some photos for your Instagram. After a few hours, we drove to Lunenberg. These are single roads, so they can get quite busy, but nice drive all the same. Amazing place, lots of colourful scenery, especially on a nice clear day. You can look over the water, it's very green, very blue water, and as you look back to Lunenberg itself, all the colourful houses. The Sinner was filmed there, if you've seen that on Netflix. Red, yellow, blue, the whole colour scheme is on show. Great seafood there. I had, for the first time, a lobster roll. It's about $27 to $28 a go, and it's...
What's the verdict?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah? What does it taste like?
Chicken. It wasn't something I didn't like, but it wasn't something that was amazing. Couldn't really work that one out. Was it worth $28? Definitely not. But I'd like to try it. Done it once. I'd say go and check it out. It's probably one of the best places in Canada to do that. I chose the Old Fish Factory restaurant as my place to go for lobster roll, but I think you can walk around town and find a few places doing it. Won't be hard to find. There is paid parking in town, and what we loved the most was parking up, walking around town, all the different little windy streets, and going down to the waterfront and looking back on the town itself. Just a really nice vibe, great weather, great colours, great day as well. It was very sunny, and just loved seeing this amazing place. I've never really seen anything like it before, and it's definitely a highlight of Canada in general, and you do have to go and see it, and I can see why they labelled it as a UNESCO site. We were staying at Little Lake Family Campground, which is about a 5-minute drive up the road. It's $27 a night, full amenities, very quiet, very safe, and very easy to get into town. Got set up and had a very quiet night. Next morning, we went back to Lunenberg because we wanted a coffee. So I went to Laughing Whale Coffee Bar, which is located in town. Nice vibe inside, great coffee, would recommend it. And then next is making the journey to Fundy National Park, which is in New Brunswick, and it's about a 5-hour journey. No booking of the campground here, so we're heading to the headquarters campground in the park and hoping for a space. We turned up and got one of the last 2 slots available. It was a tent site, no electricity, $29 a night, very comfortable. We actually tried to book 2 nights, so this was on a Friday night, but Saturday night was fully booked. So Fundy National Park, again, during the week you might be okay. If you're not booking, weekend gets full, so make sure you book that campsite up. This campsite was located right in the middle of the town by Alma, so you can't get lost, and it's right by some amenities if you need to go to the shop or get some fuel. The main aim here was Hopewell Rocks. Next morning, we're out and about and checking out the campsite. First off, we tried to check for a space, no space available, so we cracked on. This is a patron shout out to Laura from the Swamp Soup Stickers, who has contributed £5 to the podcast on my Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate it, and it helps the podcast to keep going in the future. If you're interested, head to the show notes where you'll find a link to my Patreon. The website address is patreon.com/Winging It Travel Podcast. For £5 English, you will receive some trendy stickers from myself in the post, a shout out on each episode, and also my digital travel planner by email. Thank you for your support. We found another place on the way to Hopewell Rocks called Broadleaf Ranch. This is a working ranch. They have horses there, they've got a restaurant on site, and they've also got camping spots for $20 a night. So turned up pretty early, late morning. He said, yep, no worries, $20, pick any spot you want on the grass. Picked our spot with a bench, happy days, put up a tent and cracked on with our day. Now, Fundy National Park is known for one thing in particular, and that is the tidal waves, if you like. They change from low to high in a very short amount of time, and the difference in height between the lowest point and the highest point is the most in the world. Second is actually Bristol, that river there, River Severn. And then we went to the Hopewell Rocks. First off, it was just there available. You can walk underneath it, take some photos. The tide was out. We came back about 3 or 4 hours later, maybe 2:30, 3 p.m. in the afternoon, and it's pretty much almost submerged. It's an unreal sight compared to where we were earlier underneath the rock, and now it's filled with water. It's quite weird and unnerving to see that this happens on a daily basis, but it's pretty spectacular. So you have to go in the morning and then come back in the afternoon to see the difference. And we did, and we loved it. In between, if you need a recommendation, you can pop to Cinnamon Soul Cafe for coffee and a cinnamon roll. It's about a 20-minute drive. But loved Hopewell Rocks, you've got to go there. It's the main thing to see in Fundy National Park. And the next day, we're off to St. John, which is the main city in New Brunswick, to go and check out. Got to St. John, and we thought, you know what, we're going to stay in a motel. We need it. Just felt like sometimes you need a break from the campsite or the camper van. So we booked into a motel called Okono Lodge. Your bog standard motel. It's got all the amenities, $120 a night, normal. I must say, St. John was a bit dead. Wasn't the most amazing place I've seen. Maybe it's a Sunday and no one's about, I get that. The cafe we went to, Art Warehouse Cafe, was actually quite trendy. We had 2 coffees there, done some work. Liked the vibe there. It's got some artsy stuff going on as well as the coffee. But overall, St. John, just didn't really get anything from it. I guess cruise ships go there because there's something to see. It's quite historic. It's one of the older cities in the area. But overall, didn't feel like I was missing out if we didn't go to it. But we done it anyway and stayed the night in town. The next day is the end of the Canadian road trip because we're going from St. John to Maine in USA. Now, the usual route is up the road through to Calais, which is obviously the border crossing via the road, and into Maine. But we thought we'd take the unusual route of La Tête to Deer Island to Campobello Island. So that's an hour drive and 2 ferries before crossing the border. The reason being, better scenery. The first ferry is free, and also you get to go to Campobello Island, which is quite a nice island. They've got the Roosevelt Park there. Just some things to go and change it up instead of just driving all the way to the border and then through Maine. The journey down to La Tête was very easy. As you arrive into the port, you just park your car up to the side behind the other cars and wait for the ferry. They're pretty regular, and that is free. On our ferry, very, very foggy. Didn't see a thing. It takes about 15-20 minutes. Got to the other side at Deer Island, and then you have to drive all the way down to the bottom of the island to get the next ferry to Campobello Island. This ferry costs $30 for a car. I think that includes a return. She asked us if we're returning. We said no, we're carrying on. But that is a car with 2 people, and I think this is private. There's a weird situation. We sort of thought we queued up by some cars. Didn't really see a point to get onto the boat. A bit strange. And it arrived late. Boarded fine. Got across, no problems. Onto Campobello Island. This crossing was much better. The fog cleared up. Got some great views. Met an older couple on the boat, and they're asking about BC number plate, quite far, what our trip was about. Talking about the podcast, and we got to know them as well. Gave them a sticker. She got a photo of us. Very nice to interact with some fellow travellers in a camper van. And we got to Campobello Island. Now, our plan was just to have lunch and get going, but we did actually check out Roosevelt Park, which is quite cool. It's got a little museum. It's got some houses there where Roosevelt had a holiday. I think it's overstated a little bit how many times he went there, but he went there a few times as a kid and as an adult. And it's very nice surroundings, cut grass. It's got USA and a Canada flag. They talk about the history between the 2 countries and the war and stuff like that. It is worth it before you crack on to the border. Also, it is the only international park in the world where it's combined with USA and Canada. They both own it. They both run it together. Combination of countries running it there, which is quite cool. But it is on the Canadian side. not on the American side of that part of the island. And after walking around, we thought, you know what, had lunch, done that, it's time to drive up to the border and get across to the USA. A big moment, about 8 weeks in at this point. We drove up, queued up, got to the border. Now, first off, the guy who asked us questions first was a bit surprised we were coming from BC, but I kind of knew that we were probably going to get our van checked, so we had to park our van up and go inside to the office, and we got our visas issued there and then, $6 each, and we also got our van checked. No dramas, obviously told the truth, told them about our plans. They do keep asking you the same questions and make sure you give the same answers. But very nice overall experience, not as scary as some people make it out, and pretty easy getting over the border. It took about half an hour though in total. And that is it. That is Canada done. I'll carry on this day in the new episode for the US portion of the road trip, which is obviously the next episode. But for now, that is it for Nova Scotia and New Brunswick and today's episode. I'm now going to wrap up for a minute, elevator pitch on Canada as a road trip as a whole. First off, scenery. We have covered an array of scenery. We're going from lakes to the west coast, vineyards, some mountains, some flat grasslands, loads of national parks, tidal surges, islands, the east coast, and all these cities in between. What is the top 10 cities in terms of population? I think we covered most of them. The only ones we didn't do was Edmonton, I can think off the top of my head. So we did really crack on with every city available. Met some podcasters on the way, met some great people, had some great experiences, and got used to the van. It took us a while, about 3 weeks, before we made the leap to do a free night, like in a Walmart, for example. Kind of wish we'd done it sooner, but we learned some lessons along the way, enjoyed the camper van, enjoyed most of the Airbnbs and the accommodation, spent a lot of money on fuel, and done a lot of shopping at Walmart. But overall, love the experience of Canada. It's the best way to see it. It's probably the cheapest way to see it too. Get yourself a camper van, make it comfortable, self-contained even better, and get driving across. You're going to need 8 to 12 weeks, in my opinion. We could have done more. We could have gone to Newfoundland in the East Coast, but we didn't have time or money to do it. And we could have done more, maybe Northwest BC, but we're picking at things there. Thoroughly ticked off a lot of stuff that we want to see. Happy with the trip. I'm very excited to go into the next phase, which is the USA. So I'll wrap it up there. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time for the first episode of the USA road trip. Cheers. Eight weeks in, we made it to Halifax, and we're now going to drive back. Let's go. Please follow and subscribe on my YouTube channel today, and please rate and review the podcast on any podcast platform that you use. Thank you.